Okay, first I want to give a big shakayah to Rabbi Yeshua for arranging this. And when the flyer was being put together, so it said that the Rav was Mardash for 30 years or something like that. I remember I was in Keelan Hills 40 years ago, and the Rav was there. And we grew up in the community with Minchas Chaim. Pesach was Pesach, on the Haggadah, and the Hilchas Pesach, and in the Sforim. And we have it. For us, it's tremendous covenant, tremendous close to have the Rav. Thank you.
Obatim chashuvim b'nei Torah, loim de Torah, choyve v'Torah, moiv rabotzai. Shem coming to this neighborhood, actually, John Shemati, as Rabbi Weinberger mentioned, for many years. Of course, I remember, as they say, when the beard was put this way, a different color, and it was already Marbus Torah at that time, actually, and then one can imagine throughout all the years being a Marbus Torah. The Gemara says, "Gedoyim nasat yoshim," being able to see that the young Talmidim have grown up and have built their own families. That was just from then. And certainly, as time goes on and on. I say, as I step into here, I can just echo the words of David HaMelech. Samachti boim li beis Hashem neilech. The Melech said, "What gives me simcha to be able to come into a beis Hashem." You have to realize who is saying that. David HaMelech is saying that as a Melech b'Yisrael, he had called Tanuga Oilum Hazeh b'Yodoi. There was nothing that he could not have had. And yet, what does he say? What gives them simcha? What gives them simcha is to be able to come to a Beis Hashem. And certainly, I echo the same thing. Coming here, seeing that the Choshev Oilam, on the influence of the Choshev Rod, is Avada and Avada. So, Machti Boimli Beis Hashem Leich, a tremendous simcha to be able to be here. I'd like you to just appreciate before I my remarks that it was the Yiddish Holocaust survivor from Europe who came to America many years ago, and he decided things are going to change now. So in the old country, he said, I was a nobody recognized, but nobody gave me any COVID. But now it's a new world. He said, I'm going to be somebody else. So he goes there and has a very special suit, tailor-made, a custom suit, very expensive suit. He buys an expensive hat. Man, you looked at him, you thought, boy, he's like the bank president. And then he goes to shul for the very first time, and he says, also in shul, it's not going to be the way it used to be. It used to be able to sit in the back with all the kaptzonim, but now it's going to be different. I'm going to sit up front. He goes, looks very presentable, and he goes and sits up front. It comes the time for Kriyas HaTorah, and the Gabbai, Abby calls out, is there a kohen in the house? And the idea just went through his mind. He said, well, all my life I wanted to be a kohen. He says, so, I'm a kohen. And he goes up. They call him up for a kohen. After that, he comes down. So it's customary, you go over to the Rav, you give Shalom Aleichem, give Shkoyach. And the Rav takes one look at him, and the Rav says, Zundel? Is that you? He says, when are you a kohen? I knew your father. Your father was not a kohen. I knew your grandfather. No, it was a kohen. How'd you become a kohen? And he says, listen, this is America. If you can be a Rav, I can be a kohen. And unfortunately, this is the situation we see many times. It's just human nature that people like to ingratiate themselves and flatter themselves with many miles that they don't have. The Baruch Hashem, that I believe that the killer here is very fortunate to have a Rav, to love Sati Dishmai, to be able to speak not only on the killer, but the community at large and further and beyond, to be able to have them grow in Torah, Shemaim, and Chassidus. So first of all, my bracha is, we started to be mamshich navoyis hakodesh many more years, but simcha v'nachas with shefa bracha v'stocha b'yas hagoyel. Amen. It's before Pesach, Chavada and Avada. So one of the highlights of the Seder is the idea that the belief that, of course, that Eliyahu Novi comes to visit. Eliyahu Novi comes to the Seder every year, and certainly, no question, Eliyahu is very welcome. But the question, what is the meaning of the visit? And what are we supposed to learn from that we are privileged to have him come? Interesting to point out, just for starters, it's not very clear B'chlal who wrote the Agoda. According to some opinions, in fact, it was Eliyahu Novi. For example, the opinion of one of the Gedolei Chassidim, Rabbi Rabbeinu Pshischa. His opinion, in fact, is that the Mechaber of the Agoda, about 10 different, by the way, opinions, who wrote the Agoda. Some say Anshe Knesset Agdoila. Al Kol Ponim, Rabbi Binim said with Eliyahu Hanovi, he was the one, he's the Balagoda. We'll say the Balagoda said, who's the Balagoda? It's Eliyahu Hanovi. And one of the indications is because for Moshe we find the Lashon Baruch Hamoka and Baruch Hu. It's a type of a phrase we find many times in Tona Devei Eliyahu. Baruch Hamoka. And therefore, again, among other reasons, Eliyahu Hanovi was the one that actually wrote the Haggadah. Some also give a remez, usually you find in Sfarim a Mechaber, actually, in the beginning of the Sefer, there's some sort of a remez or a gematria, or the name of the Sefer, what the name is, personal name. So, begin the Haggadah with Holach Manyo, so Hod, Hey Aleph, Vashatevis, Eliyahu Hanovi. Kedayme. So, Kapanim, so, Haggadah, written Eliyahu Hanovi, but B'cholai, from whether he did or not, Eliyahu Hanovi comes to the Seder. Eliyahu Hanovi comes to the Seder. So now we understand what is the real significance of the idea of Eliyahu Hanovi coming. Second of all, we know the Gemara says in Bab Metzia Daf Kuf Yudalid, the Gemara says that in fact that Eliyahu is that Pinchas. Eliyahu is that Pinchas. But the Lashon is not that way. The Gemara says Pinchas Eliyahu. Pinchas that's mentioned in the Torah, that's Eliyahu Hanovi. The question is, in chronological order, first came Pinchas, then came Eliyahu. She said, Eliyahu is that Pinchas. When Pinchas was alive, we didn't have Eliyahu Hanovi yet. So instead of saying that Pinchas is Eliyahu, as the Gemara says, we should have said really Eliyahu is that Pinchas. Why are we saying Pinchas is that Eliyahu? Another thing that I believe that important to understand is the kasha that the Chassam Sofer raises in Parashat Tzal. So he raises the question, he says, the halach is that matzah has to be baked in an oven, not under the sun. Although the sun can provide a lot of heat, and technically you could bake matzah, there's enough heat. But the Gemara says you're not yotze with matzah that's baked b'chamo, that's baked under the sun, but rather to be baked in an oven. And the question is, as some Sefer, after all the matzah that we eat, right? Our ovos, he says, that went out of Mitzrayim, that matzah was baked b'chamo. Doesn't make that in the oven. So the matzah that our author said, Tami Yitzis Mitzrayim, in fact was matzah that was baked b'cham under the sun. So how is it that the halacha dafka is the opposite? That we are not yotze with matzah that's baked in the sun, that has to be dafka in an oven. Another kasha from Sofer, but this is already in the Drosses from Sofer, in the Chelik Beis. So there's another question, which is, there is a special halacha, Pesachim Daf Lamed Hey, that matzah dafka has to be from a type of grain that could become chametzik. If it's not able to become chametzik, then not yotze matzah. Therefore, dafka the 5 types of grain which are able to become chametzik, if you don't watch it. But for reality, you can't use the most oires, other types of, you could make matzah technically, rice, millet, and this kind of situation. But being that they cannot come l'dei chimutz, you're not yotze matzah. So Sefer says, it seems just the opposite. It's counterintuitive because matzah should be something that's the furthest away from chametz. And yet dafka daloch is you're only yotze with the matzah that could mamish become chametzik. And everybody knows that if you're not very careful, certainly it will become chametzik. So why the akpoda dafka if we want matzah, as some soifer, the dafka has to be from a mint, the type of grain that dafka is able to become chametzik. And then maybe a fourth situation, the Korban Pesach was eaten together on matzah simroirim yochlu. Why the combination? What's the significance of this combination? Korban Pesach, matzah simroirim yochlu. I think this is a Yitzis Yitzis Mitzrayim, Rabbi Isai was a hachona for Kabbalah Sator. Now one thing is very, very clear. We all want to be matzliach in Torah. We all want to have siyata d'shmaya to be matzliach in Torah. But in order to have siyata d'shmaya, in order to hope to be successful in Mirat Torah, we have to be very mindful what Rabbeinu Yoina says in his Pirish, in Meseftes Ovis, on the well-known Chazal, we all know Derech Eretz Kodma L'Torah. So Rabbeinu Yoina says midos is a prerequisite in order to be matzliach in Torah, which means to say is Torah needs a kli. Torah needs a kli. In order to be able to contain Torah, so you have to have a kli in order to be able to absorb the Torah. The kli for Torah, says Rabbeinu Yoina, is midos. The person does not have refined character, does not have midos toivus, will not have siyata d'shmaya in Torah. As a matter of fact, he goes on to say that lest a person might say, you know what, I'm going to learn, and I'll work on my midos after that. No. But the other way around. First, you have to actually build your character. You have to work on your midos, and that's the Loshen derech eretz is kod mol Torah. So it makes a lot of sense that if the whole in of Yetzias Mitzrayim was Hachonah for Kabbalah Torah, there's a lot of sense that in the Hachonah, or the mitzvahs of Yetzias Mitzrayim, the Leil HaSeder, are supposed to actively somehow be ingredients or elements that's going to work for character building. Because the whole Yetzias Mitzrayim is the tachlis to be able to reach. And of course, we work on that during the Mea Sphira. You work, doesn't go, it's like a switch, all of a sudden you change. But the whole idea, of the limud at least, the limud that we have to understand, is to find out actually what are the definition of midas toivus. Everybody talks about midas toivus. Whole world, even in Oelbaum, there's a lot of books, right, about ethics and so on and so forth. Put the fork on the right side and left side. These are not the midas we're talking about, where you put the fork. Like a point when you're talking about midas toivus, we have to figure out the following. The Nekudat Advarim is, the Baal Shem Tov once was sitting with his Talmidim. Baal Shem Tov made a statement that every mitzvah in the Torah, he says, Be'etzim is noyeg bein b'zman she beis hamikdash kayim, bein b'zman she'en beis hamikdash kayim. So they asked him, really? All the mitzvahs are applicable whether they have a beis hamikdash or not? How do we have Porah Aduma when we don't have a beis hamikdash? How do we have Porah Aduma? Baal Shem Tov pointed out, in Porah Aduma, he says, and in any mitzvah, when I say that every mitzvah applies, even when we don't have a Beis Hamikdash, it means the hashkafa is a mitzvah. Every mitzvah has hashkafa behind it. Sometimes if we have the Beis Hamikdash, we're able to be mekayim the mitzvah of the poil. We can actively do it. But otherwise, if we don't have the Beis Hamikdash, says the Baal Shem Tov, the hashkafa mitzvah applies. Porah Aduma says, Porah from Loshem Prurvu, which means a person actually becomes inflated, becomes increased. It's an inyan of gaive. And by Porah Aduma, we find the concept of metamet oherin and metar tameim. It has contradictory properties. Some Sefer also says that, but in a different way. But the Rosh Hashanah pointed out that the same thing with any midah. Take the midah of gaive. It's metar tameim, metamet oherin, which means that sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad. Which means to say there's no such thing as a good midah or a bad midah. The question is, what is the Ratzon Hashem now for me to do? If Ratzon Hashem is particularly for this particular midah, and if I do something else which I think is better, it's not. For example, everybody understands another. The one with choshev midas, gaiva all over the place. We find countless Mamorah Chazal and Psukim. There's something which is repulsive. Gaiva. What's gemishla? Tiyavas Hashem called Gevalev. But the Gemara in Soita Davhei, Kolam Itzgoy, Kiloivid Avoid Zora, endless Mamorim. How to reject Gaiva. However, it's very, very clear. There's something called Gaiva de Kedusha. There's a time is when you have to stand up and defend the honor of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Vayigba liber b'darav Hashem. So says the Novi. When it comes to time to take up the honor of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you can't say I'm a nonov. Who am I? Let somebody else do it. If I can't, when somebody's a nonov, when the time comes where you have to stand and rise up to the occasion, that's called another psula. It's apostle another. So another, as great as the mile of anivis is, it is only if that's the Ratzon Hashem for that particular time. But when the time comes for you to stand up and to you the midah of Gaiva, the Miller once said that is actually what made Shevet Levi great. They were angry, as a matter of fact, also. Kas is a terrible midah. But he said they had kas when they saw the Inyan, how the people actually followed the Egel. They took that midah and used it in the right time. That's what Hashem wants. So there's no such thing. And therefore, really, the word of midah really means it to be measured. You have to measure it. It's not automatic. Anov is always right. It doesn't mean Gaiv is always bad. You have to measure it. You have to figure out what is the right thing at this particular time. As a matter of fact, they say many times you find Shnei Nevi'im Misnabim B'Sigun and Echad from two different cheder, from one end of the world to the other. So you have Moshe Feinstein. Moshe Feinstein acts the similar kasha that the Rechaim HaKodesh has. Zois Chukes HaTorah, Parshas Porah Aduma. By the way, so Baal Shem Tov said, just like Porah Aduma is Metar Tamei, Metam HaTorah, sometimes it purifies and sometimes, that same thing says the mid is also mid of Gaiva. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. Sometimes it's Tommy, sometimes it is Tor. That is the way a person has to actually develop his midah to understand what is right and what is it wrong. So it comes to Paraduma, you should have said Zoit Chukas HaPorah. You should have said Zoit Chukas HaTahara. Why is Zoit Chukas HaTorah? We're not talking about the entire Torah. Because that one Parsha Baloischa talks about the Krom Pesach, it says Zoit Chukas HaPosach. It doesn't say Zoit Chukas HaTorah. We're talking about Pesach, so it says Pesach. Here too, it should have said Zoit Chukas HaPorah, or Chaim HaKodesh, Avasar. So Moshe also. Why is Zoit Chukas HaTorah? So Moshe Mam said this concept. And use a number of examples, maybe I might add one. Take L'moshel Kovet. Everybody understand the person is supposed to be a Boreach Min HaKovet. By the way, that's not the Lashon you find in Chazal. Erevin Yud Gimel it says Boreach Min HaGedula. It's the same thing. That's what it means. The person supposed to despise Kovet. The person supposed to run away from Kovet. The person has to reject Kovet. Says Ramosha Feinstein, yes, reject Kovet, your own Kovet, but not Kovet Chavercha. It comes to the Kovet your Chaver, you have to be Mechabed. You would have possible, make him feel good. Give him all the covet possible. It comes to your own covet. You can be Mavater in your own covet. You should be Mavater in your own covet. You don't stand on ceremonies. You should be Michael. Yes, coming to your own covet, covet is not a good thing. But when it comes to somebody else's covet, covet is like a valdige thing. Forget. You have to be Mechabed someone. Or take Moshe, we have a situation. We know there's such a thing called a pazran, somebody who has an open hand to give tzedakah. Then we have kamtzen, somebody who is stingy, tight-fisted. We always say that somebody is tight-fisted, of course, is a chasarn. To be a pazran, but has an open hand, that's a mila. So Moshe says, yes, it's an open hand on your own money, not on somebody else's money. The people, come somebody's money, then he's very free, Come to his own money, then didn't prove it, didn't mayor. That's all of a sudden even a proof of the opposite. Depends. On your own money, he says, you can be a pazran. Forget, have an open hand. Share whatever you have with others. But for the gab is somebody else's money, should be a kamtzen. Money, even a pruta should be chosher. Same idea. Sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad. Okay, use another example. Use the midah of bitochen. Bitochen is a tremendous midah. Sometimes we can't survive without it. I should mention, of course, without a name, I know a very, very, very choshev yid in Brooklyn Borough Park. Actually, he's the money of an Eidach Cheshuva. And something went wrong, whatever it is, and he was incarcerated. And he said, had I not been studying, they asked him, how'd you manage? He said, if I had been studying, I don't know, I would have survived. Bitochen. It's a gewaltige thing that gives you chizik. He has bitochen. He has amunah. He has faith. Bitochen is a gewaltige midah. It says very, very clearly, Rabbi Apjan and all the Balamusar. Bitochen is a gewaltige midah, he says, on your own problems. You have problems. You have nisyonis. You have challenges. Sometimes it's sickness. Sometimes it's parnosa. Yes, sometimes it's shidduch. Yeah. There's endless type of challenges that we go through. Bitochen. But in somebody else's tzaras don't have bitochen. Somebody knocks on the door, and he's standing there in front of there, and he's unleashing himself with all his problems. Don't give him electro bitochen. If you have a couple of dollars, give it that. If you don't have that, give him an ear, give him a shoulder. Bitochen? It's on your own problems, bitochen. Somebody else says you should help him. Not to be about bitochen. That's not that place now. Of course you have to have bitochen. So here we see that each and every midah, in the right time, it's gewaldig, it's tremendous. That's the Ratzon Hashem. But in the wrong time, it's not like that. Or Malav Mashal, one can go as far as saying, where the Gemara talks about also brachas of, hey, the person should be Mekabel Yisur and Be'ahava. Gewaldige thing. The person should be Mekabel Yisur and Be'ahava. If you go into a hospital and be Mevake Choyle someone, don't tell him be Mekabel Yisur and Be'ahava. Chav Shalom, you're in the hospital. Say, boy, Shalom, I'm Mekabel Be'ahava. Yeah. He's going to visit somebody else. Don't tell him to be Mekabel Yisur and Be'ahava. You can find the right words to say. These are the situations which each and every midah in the right time could be Tor. It's Metam Toherim and Metam Tar Tameim. It all depends how it is used and what the Ratzon Hashem is at that particular time. So Moshe says, therefore, the idea that you find by Por Aduma contradictory properties, that's not just by Por Aduma. Zois Chukas HaTorah. It applies to all the areas. By Bitochen, by Tzedakah. In any situation a person goes through, by COVID. So any imid in the Torah, the same idea, it's mitar to me, mitar Torah, sometimes yes and sometimes no. So zois chukas HaTorah. This principle that you take and you see by Paradum applies to all areas. Chaim Brisker. Going Goinim, Avada. We started out, Avada taught the world. He knew a very special derech halimut, no question. Not everybody's aware that Reb Chaim Brisker was a Goin and Chesed as well. Tremendous, was a Goin and Chesed. In fact, Briskerov, his son, used to say, we had an open door all the time in Brisk. That every, as he called every Orche, every person who walked by, every wayfarer, every passerby had room to come into the house. After they that the house, many times our house was filled with all types of beggars and so on, that we family members sometimes had to sleep on the floor. It's to an exaggerated point. Tremendous going of chesed. Matter of fact, Yosef Soloveitchik, on a tape, and they hear, he said that Reb Chaim heard a couple of children playing. There was a child that was crying. So he called up the child and said, why are you crying? He said, and it happens today also, he said, kids sometimes get or they make teams, and they left him out. So Reb Chaim asked him, so what were you playing? What was the team, what were they playing? So he said they were playing something that's called horsey. The kids took turns, they would get down on their hands and knees on all fours, and have another kid ride them, back and forth. Reb Chaim got down on his hands and knees and said, you're going to ride on top of me. It's Hafla B'Fil. This is what he said. On tape. And it's published later on in the Sefer. Chaim, Goy Nechesed. So, Rav Shach says, they once asked Reb Chaim, being that your door is always open, why do you have a door, B'chlau? Why do you have a door? We have a door, why? Because we close it. And we open it. But if your door is always open, so why do you have a door? Reb Chaim answers, his own Reb Chaim can answer. You know the Machlokes, the Rambam, the Rosh, whether mezuzah needs a door. I need a door to have the mezuzah because according to Rambam, you need a door. I need a door. It's very important for mezuzah. We don't make a bracha if you have an opening, you know. And you have to put a mezuzah, being tzofik, whether you're really chayv not, so put on without a bracha. You want to make a bracha where you have a door, and then you pater all the other places. It's Chaim. So Reb Chaim was the Goy Nechesed. Cheskel Avramsky was one of the great Talmidim of Reb Chaim, and he once asked Reb Chaim, being that you spent basically a couple of years with Reb Chaim, we'd like to know what was his personality. Was he a calm person? Was he easily to get angry? But tell us a little bit about the personality of Reb Chaim. What type of? We know a lot about his learning, but we want a little bit about his personality. You were there, you can tell us. Cheskel Avramsky says, I don't know. Why? Reb Chaim's, he says, personality changed, and he was what the Torah wanted at that moment. If the Torah Chashol was to be calm, he was calm. But it was the time for Kenoy. Reb Chaim was a tremendous Kenoy. Chaim was a tremendous Kenoy. I'd get a kachel to kill you, he would have joined the good and then he left it. You do it. Not getting into all the details in it. That was a great Kenoy. But otherwise, Reb Chaim had his battlers for anyone. Door was open, anybody could come in. But Cheskel Avramsky said, I could not tell you, I was there for 2 years, and I can't tell you what he really was. Because he really was only that what the Torah wanted to be, and it kept changing. If the Torah wanted to be this, this was this. The time was to stand up, to be aggressive, to be tough, to be strong, and to defend the honor, the Kvod Shemayim, then that's what he was at that time. So how am I supposed to know what Reb Chaim really was? He kept changing. He kept changing all the time. That was Reb Chaim. So I want to tell you the following. And it's like a hafla b'fela. Probably safe to say, I mean, who measures? But probably, who is the on of Hador? Who is the on of Hador? Now, one thing's plain. All the Gedolei Yisrael were Anovim. Because all the Gedolei Yisrael, not just Go'onim and Tzidkes, in Lumdus, cannot point and show me a Godel was only a Godel in Torah if he was not a Godel in Tzidkes. So that's not accepted by Klal Yisrael. A Godel in Klal Yisrael has to be Ishol, Mishlemus, in all areas. Sai Limud HaTorah, Sai Yerushalayim, Sai Midas Toimus. Can't have one without the other. But if we're forced, let's say, to pinpoint who was the On of Hador, the greatest honor. By the way, and being at the same time the Godel Hador as well. Rabbi Kiveger. Kiveger Aboisai was not only a God Lador, without saying, he was the Onav Ador. For example, Kiveger, when he wrote letters to the Talmidim of his yeshiva, he once wrote and he said, Oelbaum loy korosi the Talmud Talmidi. Very common, look in Shals Tshuvas Forum, L'chvoy Talmidi. Natural. If a Rebbe writes a tshuva to a Talmud, he went to my Talmud. No Avla, he was my Talmud. Kevin didn't do that. But Oelbaum, I never referred to a Talmud of mine Talmidi. I don't know who learned more. Maybe I learned more from him. I mean, after all, the Gemara says in Malchus David, Talmida Yoisim Akulam. There is a concept, right, that you learn from your Talmidim a lot, even more. Begavi actually lived that. Moim loy karosi, the Talmud Talmidi. Never. Same Rabbi Kiveger, by the way, should mention. Also, there's a letter in the Sefer called Igros Soifrim, which are letters from all the Soifrim, which are Kiveger, some Soifer, Ksav Soifer, Shevet Soifer, and so on. Kiveger writes in a place, he writes to someone, do me a big favor. I'm a Rav. I need it for my parnosa. If you could find me a job someplace as a shamus in a shul, I'd eagerly, quickly accept it. Because a Rav, so much achrayas. Kiveger. Oh no, didn't feel somehow worthy to carry the achrayas and the responsibility. Me, Rabbi Kiveger, I'd rather just find me a job as a shamus in a shul. Published letter. Rather be a shamus. Kiveger. Onavador. Give you one more example. I make an example because that example is very choshev to me. This goes back. There's a Bach in yeshiva. It's in the 60s. All right. We were learning Masechtas Chulin Daf Yud Dalet. Hashoichet b'Shabbos, Aval pi shemeschai benafshoi shchitosei kisherim. Not going into that whole sugya. Not allowed to shecht on Shabbos. Loch deraisa. Shecht on Shabbos, the shchit is kosher. What's with the Tana, Rebbe, same omid there. There's a large toises. Mechatchen is avluin b'Shabbos. Regarding to be able to cut a deluin. One of the reasons maybe not could have been because it's a terchi yasera. It's a long, takes up a good space in the Yomid. There's a line. I remember learning it. There's a line, a difficult line in Toisus. So Baruch Hashem, if you used to learning Toisus a little bit, and where you have the Marshal asks kashis, but the Maram Lublin explains. Maram's derech is Rotzaloi Mer Rotzaloi Gavaldi Shmak. I mean, today there's so much more. There's translations, English, French, Spanish. We didn't have all that. All right? So you'll probably Rotzaloim instead of Pshat. Okay. At that time came out, in the 60s, came out, in Rabbi Kiveger, I'm saying this Chulin, Rush V'Chidish Rabbi Kiveger, Avram Ben Yomen Zilberberg from Pittsburgh. He did a lot. He was Oisik in Kiz V'Yad. Came out, Rabbi Kiveger came out, Masech Chulin. I remember opening up that Rabbi Kiveger, and he discusses this Toisus. And he disagrees with the Pshat of Ram Lublin. No, Mabekach. First of all, he's not arguing Halochim. Ram Lublin was going to take a Doilach Reinim right before him. Kiveger was not ready to argue in Halochim, but he was ready to say a different Pshat. But what is the issue? The issue is the Hakdama before he disagrees. Realize who the two protagonists are. Ram Lublin, we're not talking about Rishonim. Ram Lublin's Gavaldik, tremendous. We have no Hasaga. Ram Lublin. Kiveger also. We have no Hasaga but Kiveger. And he says the following. I mean, still realize it's etched to my bones. The Lashon. Even as a young bocher, not so much of a maven in the style of writing, of Gedol Yisrael, but that has to hit you. Kiveger says this. Omnom. La'achar mechila mekvoit harosoi. Ula'achar nishikas afar kochoy. Oimer ani be'emo be'yiro the dvar of megumgomim. There's something that's not straight. Why is he machnier himself so much? He's not arguing Allah, saying another pshat. He's saying another pshat in the Toysves. And he's not arguing Rishonim. He's talking about the Gedoylach Roinim. So he's saying just another pshat. Again, the Givaldi Anivis and these battles. Tremendous Anivis, this battle, another just indication. Kiveger had Today, a Bachar learns the Tosfos, he said, must be a mistake over here, because he believes he understands better. He's no problem. No problem even argue with Rishonim. Goes like this. Kiveger, dealing with him and an Achron, the Vraham Gomen. That was every Kiveger. Why am I mentioning this? There was a tremendous historical controversy. And that was the following. There used to be the very choshev Shas was called the Slavita Shas. The Shas were the children of Pinchas Koretz, or Haraba Kodesh of Pinchas Koretz. Tremendous tzaddik Ish Kodesh Moed. So Shapiro, Meir Shapiro was a grandson. Shapiro's their Klal are descendants of Magalamukis, also Shapiro. Pinchas Koretzer. So they had a copyright on the Shas. They print the Shas, especially then, a lot of time, money invested. It's not Porsche. So they had a copyright on the Shas. What happened after a while, the Shas went out, sold out, and another Shas was needed. Came the Vilna Shas. The Shas that we have today basically is on the style, the formation of the Vilna Shas. That's what it is. Came the Vilna Shas, they came to print a new Shas, it was a tremendous din Torah. There's not enough word to explain the fire that went on. The Anshe Slavita took the Anshe Vilna to din Torah. We have a copyright on our Shas. How is that you're coming out to print a new Shas? However, the taina against that was, we had a copyright, it says on the first Shas. Second Shas? First Shas is gone. You want to print a new Shas? We're also game. We're here. And each side had Gedolah Yisrael. Each side had Gedolah was siding with them. The people of Slavita had Gedolim. That what? It's an avla. Vilna should not print another Shas. Can't print another Shas. Kiva Eger was on the side of Vilna. Kiva Eger was on the side of Vilna. So they do have a right. Now Slavita didn't like that. So there came out some sort of in a publication, a remark, sort of in a way like to slight Rabbi Kiveger, which went something like, we also have Gedolah Yisrael on our side. Kiveger got up and said, Koverat Torah Bedora Zeh Zeh Ani. As if to say, I don't care about your Gedolah Yisrael. The boy said, that's the same Rabbi Kiveger? That's the Onavador? That's the same Rabbi Kiveger. And then they said something else. Rabbi Kiva said, I'm not mevater, I'm not moichel. You ask yourself, is this the Onavador speaking? Yes, 1,000 times yes. Anivis is a gewaldige midde, tremendous midde. But that's when this is the Tzarech HaShoah, and that's what the Kodesh Baruch Hu wants. And that's what is needed. But in the event of the Tzarech HaShoah is to stand up and to say the Dvar Hashem, and to speak the truth, there's no room for Anivis. And that Onavador all of a sudden becomes the Elohim and the defender. It's expressing very clearly what the Das Torah is. Kiveger. So now, what happened? Happened. So you move on. And you have the Aruch LaNer. Aruch LaNer, one of the last of the Gedolah Chachma Ashkenaz whose form are being learned like one of the early Achronim. Aruch LaNer. Tremendous Hatzloch in Oelbaum Yeshivas. So many Mesechtas. Sefer on Yevamis he wrote before under the age of 30. Tremendous going. Nobody knows what a tzaddik was. Oelbaum Mekubal as well. And he did a lot of fasting. Shamshel Hirsch was a Talmud of the Aruch LaNer. Bazil Hildesheimer, Talmud of the Aruch LaNer. With the great Gedolah Yisrael. Just giving an indication. For example, one of these form of the Aruch LaNer, also besides on the list of Mesechtas, you all have Shal Sechuvas Binyan Tzion. Also from the Aruch LaNer. Very interesting there in Kamakoyim to point out. But there's also the Sefer Bikuri Yankov on Hilchas Sukkah and Lulav. If you ever learn Mishnah Brura, you can see it come out everywhere. He brings down the Psokim of the Aruch LaNer from the Sefer Bikuri Yankov. His name was the Yankiv Yukef Ettlinger. Yankiv, Bikuri Yankiv. And Kiveger had a copy Right? Kivega had a copy of the Bikurim Yankov, and on the margin he writes something like this. Zochisi lechaven ledatoi hagdoilo. Notice, not only are you, Baruch Hashem, I was like, for Rabbi Akiva to write a Loshen Zochisi to a contemporary, to a Godel ben Doiroi, Kamat is unheard of. Zochisi lechaven, to one of the Rishonim, Zochisi lechaven to one of the Gdoila Achroinim, Zochisi lechaven to someone who was a contemporary. Again, two things. Side Aniv is Rabbi Akiva again, and side how he held in high esteem the Oracle and error. I want to mention the following. Ochanel lived in the Tkufa where the Reform movement was making a lot of inroads. He was in Hamburg. First Reform temple was in Hamburg. And of course, who not? Stand up and fight to try to stay the movement, to try to be mitzamtzim the movement, not allow it to move, not allow it to increase. Shloime Eger. You have to hear this. Shloime Eger was the son of Rabbi Akiva Eger. And I want to tell you this on the side. By the way, in Shulchan Aruch, the large Shulchan Aruch, sometimes you have on the side Gilyon Marashah. Marashah is Rabbi Shloime Eger, not the Marashah that you have in Shas. Just you should know. So Gilyon Marashah on the Shulchan Aruch, the big Talmud Chelke Shulchan Aruch that you have Gilyon Marashah, that's Rabbi Shloime Eger. Shloime Eger was a Rav, but he also, before he was a Rav at Tkufa, he was also Isaac in business. He was Isaac in business. And, but he was learning Kama Shoyes B'yoyim. Matter of fact, it said he had a bracha from his father that if he's in a sugya and he has to break to go for business, he had a bracha from his father when he comes back, he can continue learning as if he never left off. Because usually when there's a break, it takes time to get into the sugya again. He had a bracha from his father that as soon as he's finished and goes back to learning, he'll be able to be mamshech as if he never stopped. Hafsok should not be hafsok. And I say another thing. In the Tshuva Akiva Eger, you'll find in many pages, you'll find correspondence between father and son. If you put your hand on the bottom, without looking to see who's writing this, is it Akiva Eger or Shlomo Eger? You would very often be hard-pressed to know who it is, because Shlomo Eger was a goyin in his own right. If you put your hand and try to figure out who's writing, is his father now writing or the son? Couldn't figure out. Shlomo Eger, tremendous goyin. Shlomo Eger, at that time, had the feeling that the Or Chaner possibly is not doing enough in order to stem the tide of, so he decides to make the trek from his end of the world, Posen, to go down to Germany. It was a week and a half or so, those days. From this train to that train, to switch here and to switch there. Finally, he comes and he meets the Or Chaner. This is also printed, by the way, in the Sefer Igru Seifrim, where you have all the different letters. One thing he writes, a gewaldige compliment. I went to davening, he said, the Beis Medrash of the Or Chaner, and I never in Poland ever saw davening b'mila, word for word, as I saw in Germany. Very impressed with the davening. Very impressed. I have not seen this kind of a davening in Poland. But then, regarding the Or Chaner's stand against the Reform movement, he says he had a belief that, maybe the Or Chaner what's the word, doesn't have the courage, or it's sort of like afraid to take a firm enough stand, or strong, in his opinion. Fellow Or Chaner is not standing up strong enough to fight the success of the Reform movement. That was his opinion. That's in the letter. So I want to say it like this. Wasn't there. How do I know? But there's another sefer from the Or Chaner. It's called Minchas Oni. Minchas Oni is a series of essays. Here you see the Ashkof of the Or Chaner. See the Ashkof of the Or Chaner. Different parshas. So we have the Or Chaner has Minchas Oni in Parsha Baloischo. Listen to this. Kabbalah says to Moshe Rabbeinu, Es fali shivim ish meziknei Yisrael. Gather for me shivim ish. Shivim ish. The ziknei Yisrael should be shivim ish. What's the definition? What's the qualification of these 70s of Canaan? To appoint 70s of Canaan. There's one word. Shivim ish. What does ish mean? Or Chaner brings down the following Lashon of Chazal. Shivim ish. You know what kind of people I want? Shivim ish. Pomim she'doimen li. Sometimes they should be doimim to me. Hashem ish milchama ish. U'pa'amim she'doimim lecha v'ishmoishe onav me'oid mikol adam. Which means that the Gedolei Yisrael have to incorporate within themselves both midos. They have to be ish. And the word ish itself is a composite, is a combination, encapsulates two different personalities, and it's all in the definition of ish. Sometimes Pom Shedoim Li, should be doim to me, Hashem ish milchama, and sometimes they should be doim lecho. Ish Moshe Ramot Seder al Chaner. It comes time that we have to actually take a stand against others. So not always do we fight. Sometimes maybe negotiation, that might be the better way. It's not always Hashem ish milchama. It also sometimes is Shedoim Li, and sometimes she be doim lecho. So again, it's very shy to say again. This is a Hashor Be'alma. It's just a suggestion. It's not the Orchaner was afraid. I was afraid. If they had to figure out what is the proper Hanhoga now, should it be B'doime Hashem Yishmulchama, or should it be Bishmoy Shalom Yoid? Maybe he should be able to sit down at a table. At least at that time, that's what he felt. Things should change later on. You have to take a different. Try this, try that. It's very shaykh. That was the situation. So now we come to Siyam Advarim. There's a Yisrael when we talk about Chometz HaMatzah. So we find in all of the Gedolei Chassidus, you find that the Sfas Emes, as well as mentioned the Siddur Balatanya, and also interesting the Chasam Sofer and Droshes Chelik Beis, Chasam Sofer pointed out in Reish Nun Vav. The chiluk in chometz and matzah is one is gaiva and one is anova. Matzah is flat. Matzah is flat. Matzah is something that is not inflated. Matzah is the inyan of an onov, is the opposite of chometz, of course, which rises, which becomes inflated. Chometz is gaiva, says the Hashem said Chasam Sofer and the Tanya. Matzah, that's an ivis, flat. So if you're talking about chometz and matzah, so it could be Rabbi side that the reason that, as Chasam Sofer asked the kasha, why is taka matzah dafke from a mean that's able to become chometzik? Because being that matzah symbolizes another, but in order you should not make a mistake that you always need another, it should be something that could become chometzik. Sometimes the another has to be put aside. You have to use the mid of gaiva. That's why dafke the matzah has to be from something that can become chometzik, because the greater honor or the greatest honor has to have the ability also to rise to the occasion. It's not always chometz, always gaiva is wrong, and always matzah is right. The matzah itself being the inyan of anova, and that symbolizes anova, has to be something that's able to become chometzik. In other words, matzah has to have the potential for gaiva. The onov has the potential. That's called gaiva the kedusha. We do it gaiva just like that. Then it becomes gaiva the kedusha. By the way, the word gaiva also has vav k. That's half of the shem. Hashem's name is also in there. That means you do Hashem Shemayim. That's when you use gaiva. That's when you use gaiva. So Mela, the ikar is, it's not anova, and it's not rabbis, it's not gaiva. The ikar is to do whatever you do, it should be Laman Kvod Shemayim. And Rabbi said, what is Kvod Shemayim? Was Rashi saying Bereshis? Why Shemayim called Shemayim? Shemayim called Shemayim because Eish and Mayim. Shemayim, Rashi says in the beginning of Bereshis. Shemayim is Eish and Mayim. Rabbi say, what is the difference between Mayim and Eish? Mayim, of course, of the Gemara in Tandav Zayin, Mayim, of course, resembles another. Mayim is Hoylch Mamokim Gevoya. Go down the Mokim Nova, go downstream. Always up, but goes down. Clearly, the Gemara says that Torah is Nimshil the Lamayim means after the mid of Anova. Mayim is Anova. Eish Rabbi said the opposite. Chaim Vital says in Shara Kedusha, no, the Dalet Midas, Dalet Yisaitis, Eish Ofer Ruch and Mayim. Eish is Oil Lamayla, Eish is Gaiva. That's what Eish is. Eish goes up. Eish Lamaylas. Kavod Shemayim means that you do both Midas. That's called Kavod Shemayim. What the Eibishter wants now? Eish and Mayim, that's Kavod Shemayim. Combination of Shemayim is Eish and Mayim. If you need another, let it be Mayim. Now is the time for Gaiva, let it be Eish. Gaiva the Kedusha that we're talking about. In order to use it appropriately. Korban Pesach, Rabbi Isai, was Azaz the Kedusha. You know, in Pirkei Avos it says, Az Kanoma Kal Kanesher, Rotz Katzvi. You have to use the mid of Azaz also. Azaz, Kipshuta Azaz means what? Brazenness. It says have Az Kanomer. But immediately, by the way, the same Mishnah, Az Ponim Legehenim. So the Tzat Barov says, Avade, depends. Azaz is also needed. If you use it, L'Torah Kavod Shemayim, if I can, then you learn from the animal used in a positive way. But you think someone's going to be an Azaz Ponim, Az Ponim Legehenim. You're going to go to Gehenim also. That same midah which can lead you to Gehenim, that same midah should be used. Have Az Kanomer. There's a midah of Azaz for Kavod Shemayim. Pesach is tremendous Azaz because the Mitzrim, they worship the Seh. Imagine how much Azaz you have to have to be able, or even Gaiva to Kedusha, to rise up, not to be afraid. So that's what it was. So it was Gaiva to Kedusha, to be able to take the midah. Gaiva, I'm standing up, not afraid, I'm not going to buckle under. I'm not going to become bottled by Metzias. I'm going to stand up, I'm going to rise up. And I'm going to take the Korban Pesach, yes, to do it as I'm supposed to do, even though the Mitzvah was a dangerous thing. That's part of the Ness of Shabbos HaGodel, by the way. They did not know ahead of time that the Ness was going to happen. But it did. That's what's called Shabbos HaGodel, that the two bring down. So Pesach is Azat the Kedusha. That you took the Seh, which was the Avodah Zarah Mitzrayim, to Shechtav L'Shem Pesach. Come the Torah and said, wait a minute. Lest you get caught up in Azaz, Amatzah, Simroyim, Yechlu. Remember, you have to be humble also. Don't forget that midah. That's why the Pesach is eaten Amatzah, Simroyim. It's that Echot Pesach, the Gevaldig Azaz, the Kedusha that a person is using. But don't get caught up in it. Don't become addicted to Azaz. Maybe that becomes a way of life. No. Amatzah, Simroyim. Never forget that there's also the time for the other midah as well. And maybe, that's why our boy said, matzah has mayim, and it's baked through fire, not through the sun. Matzah has mayim avada resembles anova, and eish resembles gaiva the kedusha. That's why, some sofer asked why matzah is not supposed to be baked. Because matzah is anova, but we also have to know there's something not always anova. It's baked in eish. That's the only way to have that aniv is the gematzah. It's only going to be a matzah if you bake it through Eish. To remember, you also have the other midah, which is the midah of Eish as well. And therefore we say, Pinchas Eliyahu. Because I want you to understand something. In the eyes of the world, what's the difference between Pinchas and Eliyahu? First thing when you hear about Pinchas is a Gevaldi Kenoi, right? The Kenoi is Kenosi Besoicham. He's the guy, right, who gets up. You're sort of like that. You can, if you have to imagine Pinchas, right? There's somebody with an aggressive nature. Somebody might have, let's say, a short fuse. Right? Don't step on his toes. Pinchas is a Kenoi. Eliyahu happens to be the nice guy, right? Eliyahu, when it comes to the Seder, and Eliyahu is the one that's going to be Mavasser, right? Mavasser Lon B'Soiris Toivos. He's the one that's going to be Mavasser before Bias HaMashiach. So Eliyahu happens to be the one who was very, very likable. On the surface, Pinchas and Eliyahu are two different personalities. Come Chazal and say, don't know, you're making a mistake. Pinchas, that Kenoya Pinchas is really Eliyahu. He's the nicest guy you could imagine. But he's a Kenoya because that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants at the time. Adrabah. In Beteva, Rabbi Isa, if you're an aggressive person, you should not be a Kenoya because it's not Shem Shammai. Kenoya Shem Shammai is Dafka person whose nature is calm. Cool, he's collected. He's not somebody who gets angry easily. Somewhat Bechlau, is not able to control his midos. For him, it's not to be a Kenoy, it's not to Shem Shemaim. Adrab, he's looking for an opportunity. But for Kenoys. Another word of Reb Chaim. Chaim used to say, he said, the housewife and the cat both are chasing mice. What's the difference? The housewife and the cat both are chasing mice. The chil is the cat wants there should be mice to catch. The housewife or cat should be happy there would be no mice. Two types of kenoi. There's some kenoi, he always wants an issue to be able to be a kenoi. He's waiting for the issue. When will we have the next issue? No, that's not Pinchas. Pinchas really is Eliyahu. The real Pinchas is really Eliyahu. He really bets him. He's someone who's calm. He's not an aggressive person. An aggressive person should not be a kenoi. Then it's not going to go in the right place to light in the right derech. So we're getting ready for the Seder. To realize that every chelik of the Seder has so many remozim, there's so many soidas. It's really endless. You can study the Agoda a year, and many years. That's the truth. Look how many Agodas are coming out. Some are the same, by the way. But a component, listen. Every year, new Agodas. And the idea is, whatever we can talk about, we're barely scratching the surface. So much to be learned and so much to be taught. Baruch Hashem, we have the schus to be part of a kehillah. That Baruch Hashem that we're able to have a mashpia, to get involved, to learn the Agod and learn other areas of Torah. So, Be'emes, we have a tremendous opportunity to gain for the Yontif, the Gvaldig opportunity Yontif, to be able to learn from all of these midas. What is Matzah telling us? What is Chometz telling us? What is the Afikoyim and Zechel of Pesach? So many things. It teaches us we become better people, not just being Mekayim the mitzvah. The mitzvah influences us, changes us. We become better pits by learning what the mitzvah wants, what the shkof behind the mitzvah. We should give the Siyat Shemai, we should be Zoiche, that in fact that this Yontif should be the Chodesh Agula. And when we say Benitzen Nigalu, Benitzen Asidim Legoil, let's not forget what the Leif Simcha the Ger Rebbe said. What does it mean, Benitzen Asidim Legoil? Avadik Kipshut, mean that the future Gula Asidim will be in Chodesh Nissen, but the word Asidim has another pshat. The word Asidim from Moshna Achona. What do we know? Was it saying in the Megillah that when the date came out of the Gzeir Elias Asidim Loim Azet to be prepared for that day? The Leif Simcha, you see, the word of Asidim means Hachona. The avoid of Chodesh Nissen is you have to make a Hachona for Gula. You want just Mashiach to come, you have to show you want him. The avoid of Chodesh Nissen Asidim, there has to be a Hachona. The Nissen Asidim Legoil. And a great part of the Hachona is to be Mitzapim Liyeshua, to hope for him, to wait B'chilyon Enayim. You're waiting for Mashiach to come. It's a reminder with the Chavetz Chaim. By the way, the Beis Halevi was Rav and Brisk. They did not want to become Rav and Brisk. They don't want to become Rav and Brisk. Chavetz Chaim influenced them. And Chavetz Chaim said that they came to the Beis Halevi. Chavetz Chaim said, not influenced. Chavetz Chaim said what happened was, they came to the Beis Halevi. Rebbe, there's 20,000 Jews waiting for you in Brisk. 20,000 Jews waiting for you in Brisk. How can you disappoint them? Beis Halevi, softy. Right? So many Yidden waiting for me to come. He came. Said Chavetz Chaim. The Beis Halevi couldn't disappoint 20,000 Yidden. Imagine if 20,000, 30,000, a million Jews would say, we want Mashiach. Mashiach couldn't disappoint you either. He would come. You have to show that you want him. Beis Halevi couldn't disappoint him. Mashiach wouldn't disappoint you either. Show that you want him. The Achona of the Geula, that's the Avodah. You want Nissen Asidim Legoil. We have to put in the Achona. You have to prepare for Geula. You have to do our chelik. And therefore, like Simcha ended, and he said, when we said in the Birchas HaChodesh, we're Mitzapel Yeshua Kroiva. We want the Yeshua Kroiva. Kroiva the Gematria. Kroiva the Gematria. Ki mechakim anachnu loch. That's how you zoiche to Yeshua Kroiva. Show Mashiach. Show the Eibishter. So do I show him how much we want Mashiach. Can't let him. Today's not such a big Rabbi side to bring the soil to our Mashiach. You see what's going on in the world? It's all for a reason. Who knows? But one thing is clear. Bishbam is sending some message that Ein lo nu lishoy and lo avinu sheva shamayim. We see it openly. Very, very clear. It used to be hidden. You have to figure out that Ein lo nu lishoy. Now we see it. No other way. This is the avoid attack in fact of Chodesh Nissen. Nissen negalu, Nissen asidim lehigoyel. Hey, Rabbi Yomeinu, Amen. Bekor Mamish.
Amen.